Okay. You ready, sir?
Yes, I'm all set.
Okay. During the caucus, the question was brought up: are we going to have any leeway to consider any part of our plan that we presented the last two meetings we had?
Well, you know, you can counter propose whatever you want, and we can look, you know, if it doesn't add cost to the, or significant cost to the proposal, then, you know, we can take a look at it. I think you may have had proposals on, you know, where people are slotted on upon hire and things like that. I mean, we could take a look at, you know, whatever impact that may have, but it can't, you know, add to the cost and be acceptable.
The one we proposed had the line 10, 11, 12, and 13. There's some positions that officers lose money going from being a patrol officer to going to the top unit. They lose money going from being a patrol officer to being an investigator. We're trying to get all of that with a step plan. Yes, it's a step plan, but we're also trying to get all of that taken care of. So it builds morale amongst the officers where they have something to strive for. Right now, they don't want to apply for these positions because they're going to lose money.
Well, so what you're saying is because it's a different, considered a different position, then they're going to be starting at the ground zero in terms of the step plan. Is that what you're saying?
What we proposed, a police officer makes a certain amount of money. Well, you're still a police officer as an investigator, but you lose check-on pay and you lose the on-call pay.
Okay, so there are, but you're not saying that it's a new position. If you're an officer, you're an officer, and you,
Exactly.
you know, I can see clarifying that if you know, make sure that that would be at that same level continuously. But
Yes.
you're talking about in terms of ad pays they would lose if they take another position.
10, 11, and 12 is just a police officer, no promotion in rank.
Right.
The officer gets the check-on pay and the on-call pay. When
Yeah.
you're in the top unit or the crime unit, or as a canine officer, you lose both of those.
Right, but you no longer have those responsibilities to be on call or handle the dog or whatever, right? I mean, isn't it?
Lose money. So if we increase line 11, where those officers would be, it would give them incentive to want to apply for those positions. And line 12, going from an 84-hour pay period to an 80-hour pay period, you lose even more money and you lose the chance to work overtime.
Here's one thing I would suggest is maybe we look at that more carefully in the next contract. But the point is that some of those ad pays are for additional responsibilities that the officer has to take. And if they're getting rid of those responsibilities, it seems to me fair that they wouldn't get the pay, even if they're going, you know, if they transfer lateral.
Is going to 10, 11, or 12, you're having added responsibilities put on you. The patrol officer takes responsibility of the agencies. A canine officer definitely has more responsibility than just a patrol officer. Same thing with traffic unit. That officer's doing everything a patrol officer does, plus concentrating on working traffic crashes and being an expert at that. Crime investigation unit, they're subject to do anything a patrol officer does, plus they have to be an expert in drugs and narcotics. When you come to admin shifts, the investigator, he's subject to be sent out to answer any call a officer would, but he has to also investigate cases to the end and be able to go to court and prove that case. The same thing with crime prevention or my position as the accreditation manager. We have added responsibilities, but we lose money taking these positions.
Because there's no ad pay in the contract for those additional responsibilities, what you're saying.
Exactly. That's what we're trying to do with the step plan. Line 10, 11, 12, 13 is a sergeant. So 10, 11, 12, 10 is a patrol officer. He has the ability to work overtime. He gets on call. He gets check on pay. Line 11 is your specialty units that still work an 84-hour pay period. They lose the check on pay. They lose the on-call pay. So they get a little bump, a 5% bump to make up for that. They're losing $1,800 a year. 5% is not going to make up for that loss, but it gives them an incentive to want to take those positions. Then when you go to an admin job, 80 hours, you lose the on-call, you lose the check-on. You also lose the ability to work overtime. The position I'm in right now, I can work overtime Saturday or Sunday. There was just a sign-up sheet put out for a hospital detail that's 7 days a week, 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. The only chance I have to work that overtime is Saturdays. It was asked for that position for the Saturdays to be held for the admin guys. There's more admin positions than there is days available, and even patrol was allowed to sign up for a Saturday. It's just trying to get the pay equal among the officers and the ability to make the money.
Well, all I can say is there a way you can take our proposal and tweak it to add certain things in there? Maybe there's ways to move money around. You take out the 1% across the board and we address it through some of these issues in your counter proposal, and we'll consider it, cost it out, and see what goes.
The 2% across the board this year for everybody, and the 10, 11, 12, 13 lines that we proposed starting next year, it gives the city a whole entire year to budget for it. And
right.
It's taken Sergeant Milligan, for example, he's so compressed from what we proposed to where he should be. There's no way the city could catch him up in 1 year.
Well, again, we can't bargain over what happens next year here.
I'm just trying to explain where we're coming from.
But I understand it, and I see no problem. You can put whatever you want on the table for what starts next year. What we're looking at is a proposal to get us through this fiscal year that embeds a step plan into the contract. And
talking to him, so we need to make sure that he can hear what you're saying to him. Okay. Can you go ahead and finish? We're going to give you the floor. You want to go ahead and say yours first.
Well, I'm just saying that the officers, we've talked to the majority of them, they're all on board with this, and they don't mind it taking 8, 9 years to get to where the step plan says they should be. We're not asking for it next October 1. We're just asking for the step plan to be there. So an officer that's just getting married and him and his wife want to plan to buy a house, they know in the year 2027, this is how much money I'm going to be making. And it's not going to be $1.25 more than minimum wage.
Wow.
If we're out here working, answering calls, officers getting shot, we want to have the same officers with us, officers we trust, not a turnover rate that we have different people every year. We want to build an agency that they want to have a career with the City Police Department. We want to be able to pick and choose who's hired, not have to beg for applications so we can fill spots. If we get our starting salary up, and we're not asking for a large increase in starting salary, just competitive with the county, I could leave my position now and go to work at the county and get a raise.
And start and pay.
Start and pay. We're just trying to get that base salary up where we're competitive and can keep people. I know the agency is said they don't mind the stepping stone. That's fine. 1 or 2 officers every 3 or 4 years, but not 3 officers a year. We need to have camaraderie amongst the officers. They need to know they can trust the guys they're working with when they're putting their life on the line. They need to be able to provide for their families without having to work every day they're all overtime.
We build trust when you got career officers here and not they're gonna be here for 6 months. If you got career officers, they build the trust of the community, they get in the community knows them and they can talk to them. It's not a new guy every time they turn around.
Yeah, well, we understand all those goals are admirable, and we're trying to put as much on the table as the budget will allow. And again, you know, we're only can budget and agree to a contract for the rest of this fiscal year. And that's what we're constrained on. But if there's some things you want to include in a counter proposal that, you know, has some changes to what we've done, we'd be happy to look at it, cost it out, and come back with our response to it. But you know, we're looking at what we've done is to try to maximize. I mean, we effectively, you know, anybody 7 years or more gets 2%, which is the budget. And then in between or before that, it's either 1% or 2.5%, depending on where the person is in our proposed steps. So, you know, it's given an increase. It's not as much as we'd like to be able to afford, but we're constrained by the economy and the circumstances going forward. You can't pay if you don't have the money, and that's something that is pretty clear of what's happened to the revenue of the city with this COVID situation hanging over everybody's head, which hopefully will be out of the way soon, but it's not yet.
We agree and we understand the constraints the city's under. We also realize that it costs money to train an officer that's hired from day one until that officer goes solo. It's $18,000. When you're doing 3 of those a year, we're only asking for the most expensive bump, and the one we presented was $64,000. If you could retain those officers, the step plan would pay for itself. You mentioned the one you presented. I'm using Sergeant Robert Milligan here and his wife, Sergeant Connie Milligan. Right now, there is a $4,000 difference in their pay. Based on the step plan you presented, in the year 2027, Sergeant Robert Milligan will have 16 years in with the city as a sergeant. He'll be making $400 more than his wife, who will have 8 years in as a sergeant.
Well, first of all, you know, this step plan it's the beginning of the step plan. It's not the end, and we can't predict what's going to be in effect in 2027 based on what we're doing the remainder of this fiscal year. You know, we're gonna be open full book contract negotiations, and we can start it as early as you want for the next contract. But we're stuck now with just negotiating over the reopener for the remainder of this fiscal year, and that's it.
Again, we propose accepting the 2% across the board, implementing our step plan. You could implement it September 30th of 2021, and we would waive that 1 day. So then the step plan would go into place October 1st of 2021. It'd give the city an entire year to budget for that increase.
Well, I just think that it's premature and not enough information at this point to be able to agree to something that would effectively be the contract for next year.
It's not the contract, it's just the step plan.
Well, no, I understand, but the step plan is in the contract. You know, I mean, theoretically, you know, in the next negotiations, we could negotiate to do away with the step plan. We're not going to do that, but I mean, you know, each negotiation is on its own. I mean, you know, that's.
Yes, sir. And they tried for over 8 years to get step plan. The one we presented gives up the stipends for the crime unit, the investigators. It gives, the way we calculate it, they give up those stipends, so it saves money there. It also gives up the salary incentives right now for education. We agreed we would negotiate those next October and have it as a one-time, once-a-year stipend instead of it being 3% above somebody's salary. And just throwing numbers out, $500 for an associate's degree, $750 for a bachelor's degree, $1,000 for anything above, instead of it being 3% of that person's salary. I just feel like that would be easier to budget because you would know ahead of time instead of having, well, he got a 2% bump this year and now he's got 3% for AA. it's just confusing the way it is.
Now, is it your calculation that if we accepted what your proposal was, and that for next year, assuming no additional changes to the step plan, it would be a $64,000 hit in fiscal 2021? 2021, 22, I mean. If you costed it out at that.
21 would be 58,000, 22 would be 65,000. But again, if you're saving $18,000 for 3 officers that you're not having to train.
Well, that's sort of an unknown at this point. But again, well,
I think we can all agree that the future isn't.
well, again, what I would like to be able to do is to get this year cleaned up, because the longer this drags out, the more difficult it becomes to do stuff that's even retroactive to October 1. And then, start negotiations over revising the step plan going forward for the next negotiations. But I think what you propose is something that has a cost figure that is probably going to exceed what the city can do, from here on out. So
We've asked, give us a number, and we'll try to get, the step plan. Even if we have to drop it from 5% a step to 4% a step, but we never can get any feedback on what number we're shooting.
well, what you're doing, you're actually trying to negotiate, even though you've just moved it up a day, you're trying to negotiate a pay plan to be in effect after this contract expires. And, we're not there yet.
The one you propose goes into the next contract.
It does in terms of just those steps being part of it, and that's something that the members would get advantage of this year.
Ours is 2% this year, and then if they're eligible for a step next year, they would get it. If not, they would be eligible the year after that.
Well, let me ask you that. Are you willing to give us a counter proposal to our proposal? And, like you said, you mentioned some potential tweaks.
Feedback
Can you
from
do
our-
that? And then we can go from there. Right now, we're just sort of talking over each other.
I mean, I feel like we put a lot of time in the proposal we submitted. We costed it out, and we're even willing to discuss it, trying to get a number where it's suitable to the city, but we can't get you to tell us a number to shoot for.
Well, we told you the number to shoot for is $23,000 for this fiscal year is kind of where our cap is. That, as far as the next fiscal year, we don't have that number. But if you want to propose something that gives, that tweaks yours to counter what we propose, you're free to do that. But we're just talking theory here and not actually looking at numbers that Michelle can crunch and figure out exactly what we're looking at if the current contract expires and we don't have a new agreement.
What was that amount again? 24,000?
23,000 was the 2%. I think we've given you that number before. And that would be, and we were willing at the last meeting to accept the 2% across the board for this fiscal year, and then just negotiate for the whatever pay plan for the next contract. And that's fine. That's an acceptable alternative still, I think, with us. And I don't think it's materially different than what you're talking about right now, but you guys want to come back and have a step plan, then, we're proposing one to go in effect retroactive to October 1 of 2020. And then you build on that to the extent we can going into the next contract.
I've never seen a step plan with just 3 steps. I mean, usually we have steps every 2 years, 15 years, 17 years, depending on the agency, but I've never seen one for just 3 years.
Well, I have seen lesser step plans like this, and this is the beginning of a step plan. I've also been involved in negotiations where we've done away with step plans. During the Great Recession, had a city client that just did away with any kind of step plan. totally just to what they determine to be a performance merit-based pay plan with no steps. So, you know, it's all fluid, and they're, you know, different situations call for different things. We're here willing to implement a step plan to get the ball rolling on that. And, you know, it's very difficult to retreat from a step plan. It's a whole lot easier to build onto it than to retreat from it, but to put something in with, you know, umpteen steps and, you know, no clear idea what that impact is going to be economically in the future, that's just something we aren't prepared to do in the last year of a 3-year agreement.
But it's the first time we've asked for this. It's been ongoing during numerous negotiations.
Right. Well, last time we did a baby step. We didn't incorporate a step plan, but we agreed that anybody that had 5 years would get a step increase, 3% increase. We did that last year. It was like a baby step plan. Now we're expanding on it even more to finish up this contract. And then, you know, we've got another contract next year for full book to deal with, where we can have a step plan that is in effect for 3 years.
We went back to the members last year and explained to them and that we needed to thank the city for that offering, that we sold it to them as being a way to initiate a step plan.
Correct.
Understanding that the officers that have been tenured here for a while were compacted, that they needed to be stretched out. And we went to the members and sold them that was the city's understanding what we're trying to accomplish. They realized we need a step plan, and they realized that there needs to be some officers with 9, 10 years in, they've got to get ahead. That's how we was able to sell that last year, where some of us didn't get a raise, but some that were well deserving, it was a start.
Right. And I agree with that. And we promised that this negotiations, we'd work on expanding on the step and putting in a step plan, which we've proposed.
I mean, I could understand if we were coming in saying, you know, everybody's got to be put in their current step next year. We're not asking for that. We're just asking for the step plan to be put in place. And then the numbers I presented show some officers taking 8 years to get to where they need to be.
Well, you've got in 8 years under our proposal, they'd get 3 step increases plus whatever across the board increase that the city would give in that particular year, if any. Again, the only thing I can suggest is you come back with a counter proposal, either tweaking yours or adding to ours, however you want to do it. It's completely up to you. But, you know, we're just, you know, looking, you know, in a vacuum here as to what, you know, we understand if you're just sticking with your last proposal as your last best final proposal, you can tell us that too. But, you know, we need to move this forward to try to reach an agreement. In my view, you know, we're willing to discuss it and look at it. But, you know, just to talk about it, you know, sort of the concept is not getting us very far.
Again, are there any questions about the one we proposed? We've asked questions about yours, and you've cleared them up. Is there any questions? Nobody's ever asked us any questions about the one we proposed. It was just that was in the discussion.
Well, it looked like it was too expensive, so we went and crafted something from ours. If you can reduce the cost of yours, then, you know, we'll take a look at it. We've taken a look at it. It seems to be fairly straightforward in terms of what you're intending to do. I think we found, maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle, but some errors in the spreadsheet that went with it, or at least one error. So that was something that you know, but if you look at it overall, it was I think was fairly straightforward as to what you were proposing. It was just too rich. And initially, you know, you were trying to do something during a time frame that we can't deal with right now.
We have 5 minutes.
Sure. And yeah, and really your decision, Steve, I think is going to be, do you counter based on what we proposed at some point, or do you tweak your proposal to make it more attractive to us?
Should I pause it?
Back on?
Steve?
Yes, sir. We back on?
Yeah, I guess so. Or we have everybody back in the room?
We discussed a few things that we can change on our proposal to make a counter. I'm assuming you would like us to put that in written form and get that emailed to you as soon as possible.
We appreciate that. That would be good, but yeah, and of course, we'll take a look at whatever you do, but I don't think we're going to be inclined to do anything that's going to change the compensation structure during this fiscal year, but we'll take a look at it.
All right, and, we should be able to get it to you within 24 hours.
As soon as I get my, I've already done it on my computer, I just.
We can get it to you this afternoon possibly.
Well, that with anytime's fine, but let me, you know, I just think again, you know, we caucused ourselves a little bit, and you know, I don't think at this point in time we're willing to commit to something different from what goes into effect 10/1/20 before the end of the fiscal year. You know, and we're very willing to, you know, have something that goes into effect on 10/1/20, and you know, the day after it's ratified, start negotiating on the next agreement. But there's too much in terms of uncertainty, and don't know what the picture is a year from now to be able to negotiate now over something that goes into effect right before the end of the fiscal year that would carry over into the next year.
Okay, well, I mean, all we can do is send it to you, and let you take a look, so.
We'd be willing to do that, and you know, appreciate, you know, one thing I want to say is that even though we you know, think it's premature to be bargaining over changes before the end of this contract, we really appreciate the work y'all put into putting something together, because it's going to be useful to, I think, the parties in negotiating some term, long term in the next contract. I think that we're not you know, dismissing all the work that's been done, and we think it could be very valuable as a starting point on the next contract.
We appreciate the kind words, but just know that we're basing this off of what we agreed with in the past, where we have always been told next year, next contract, or whatever on the step list. Working hard on this for a number of years. We finally have a city manager who was willing to, you know, hear exactly what we had and at least try to work with us. So we appreciate that.
Yeah, and we're committed to a step plan going into effect 10/1/20 if you want it. But we're not going to change the step plan or the compensation plan during this fiscal year. But again, willing to jump right in after this thing's cleared up to start the next negotiations based on whatever you want to put on the table.
Okay, well, we'll have that to you probably by this afternoon then.
And I can tell you what it is, I just can't show you.
Mike Dusty.
We dropped the starting salary to 35,500 instead of 36. And then between the steps would be 2% or 4% each, 2% each year, 4% each step instead of 5 for each step or 2.5% each year.
And I presume your proposal, it remains 2% now or October 1,
Yes, sir.
and putting this into effect on September 30 of 2021.
Yes, sir.
So it becomes the status quo at the conclusion of the current contract, which I don't think is something that's acceptable just because of the unforeseeability at this point about what can happen. You know, our proposal where we are putting in steps, you know, we're willing to live with that as the status quo going forward. Or what I would think would be more likely is supplementing that for the next contract. But we'll take a look at what you have. Do you want to set another meeting or what do you, I think Michelle's got that 1 week notice requirement. But do you have any?
Number 7. Seven calendar days or 7 actual work days?
I would go with work days, but just so that we know we have enough time.
17.
17's not good. How about 16? Was 16th work for you guys? It's Monday?
16th?
Yes, sir.
That works for me. Do you have a particular time you prefer?
So you'd rather do it in the afternoon? They have the police department has a conflict with training during the morning and have the afternoon.
I didn't quite get that. What, there's a conflict?
I'll be okay. The afternoon is going to work better. PD has mandatory training that day, so a lot of people will be out.
Okay, so 2 o'clock on 16th?
That's agreeable. Got it.
Okay.
This is fine for us. Person, you do it in person, or I know you may have to do soon, but. Okay. So we'll just be here.
This works. And if you can get a proposal to us sooner than later, that's good too. But, we'll be prepared to address that. And again, I want you guys to know that we're still amenable to the 2% across the board for the rest of this fiscal year. And start negotiations immediately after ratification over the next contract.
Eric,
Yeah?
What time do they meet?
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock.
I'm gonna go make certain at the council chamber.